I was talking to my sister Joy the other day. She's in England and I'm in Australia. And I said, "Oh, how are you going with It's a Sin?" She said, "Oh, yes." She said, "I've watched 2 episodes, so I should keep on watching." She said, "I didn't really know anything about it because I was only attracted by the title. That's the only reason I began watching it." And she said, "But there's no sin in it, is there?" So I laughed to myself, thinking, "Oh, silly old duck. You know, she's 88 years old. What would she know about anything?" And as the days went by, I thought, she's right. Where is the sin in It's a Sin? And I began thinking about the 7 deadly sins. And they're not really in there, are they? And the boys talk about all the men they've had sex with, but you don't see them, do you? I mean, all the men they've had sex with. I was hoping you'd have a panoply of sex scenes, perhaps, a myriad of sex scenes altogether. And then I thought, well, you don't really have much idea of them being gay, from a design point of view. Look at their apartment, look at their flat. It's drab, it's dreary. And I had this kind of fantasy that the guys from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, or whatever it's called, would come in and do a zhuzh over and get them into a really gay space. And then I thought, what is the deadliest sin of all? What's the strongest sin out of all 7 sins? Pride. We talk a lot about gay pride, don't we? It's very bad, it's a sin. But I missed that sin in It's a Sin because I felt it didn't really have enough pride in what the gay community had achieved up to that point, so up to the early 1980s. Just think what we'd achieved. We've had a fortnightly gay newspaper, gay news, we had gay switchboard, we had a counselling arm, friend, we had a political organisation, a campaign for homosexual equality. And when we had this terrible, terrible situation of a disease that had no cure and was attacking mainly gay men, we had a wonderful network of information. Notably, a paper, a free weekly paper called Capital Gay, which was mainly London, but as the AIDS crisis developed, it did go to some of the other cities. It wasn't mentioned at all in all 5 episodes of It's a Sin. We saw gay news being exercised at the beginning, which is a bit of fun, and then we saw it briefly afterwards. But it seemed that they were trying to pull the wool over our eyes by saying there wasn't very much information for British gay men. And one of the characters, when he went to New York, was asked specifically to get some magazines and newspapers so we would know what was going on. This was actually not true, and it was a slight against gay pride. I get the feeling now that anything British from the past is automatically looked down upon. We don't seem to have a pride in our own history. I've been told that It's a Sin was originally an 8-part series. So I'm wondering whether in those 3 parts that never got made, there are some scenes, such as, say, Roscoe, the black guy, going to work for Capital Gay and actually really understanding how the gay press worked and going on to some of those demonstrations and really making a splash for black people and for the gay press. And that maybe there is a fantasy sequence where you see the guys having sex with hundreds and hundreds of people. Maybe that was envisaged first of all. And then the scene with the sprucing up of their flat, dreary old flat. But no, one has to accept that It's a Sin is essentially through the eyes of a non-gay person, namely Jill, played by Lydia West. It's a superb performance. She will probably get a BAFTA for it. But I would really like to say that if there was any real sin in It's a Sin, it should be the sin of pride. They should make those 3 extra episodes. So instead of it being, let's say, we call Russell T Davies our Orson Welles, and Queer as Folk was basically our Citizen Kane. It was a magnificent blast through walls and walls of very safe, very predictable gay programming. This, I fear, is his magnificent ambersons, the project that Orson Welles started but wasn't allowed to finish. It came out rather undernourished, slightly impoverished, and not as dramatically satisfying as it should be. So I want to see It's a Sin in full sin mode, with pride at the front and maybe a bit of more lust as well. I want to see it again. I did cry. I did remember the time when we thought that it was all over. We thought that all the wonderful positive steps we'd made in the late 70s and early 80s, it had all gone to dust. We were vilified even more as a result of AIDS, but even before AIDS, as you can see from this cover of Gay News, we were pretty much equated with pedophiles and murderers. And I remember in 1985, I was due to go to my Uncle Tom's funeral. He was my godfather. So I cancelled an appearance at a conference on gay issues. But that week, they published a survey which said that the British public almost equated gay people with the IRA. And I thought, I have to go to this conference, which I did. So I didn't go to my uncle's funeral. It was really nasty. It's a Sin does show some of the bad things, but the reality was much, much worse. People were rejected, people's homes were completely taken over by parents and family members they hadn't seen for years. Funerals were just masks and just pretend obituaries for people, and just as it's shown in It's a Sin. I think it's a very accurate portrait. My favourite scenes are in episode 5, with the mother returning after having a very small part to play in the proceedings and commanding that everybody do what she wants to do. And I think this is a very realistic situation for many gay people at that time. There's still no cure for AIDS. We still live in a sexually guilt-ridden society, not just in the Western world, but obviously outside that as well. If AIDS came along again, would we react any differently? I feel that the British reaction from the gay community and the lesbian community was very good. It was excellent, really. From the government, not good. From the social services and the hospitals, I think pretty magnificent. I think most people felt that they completely threw away judgment and just got on with it and looked after people. Young men, usually young men in extremis, who suddenly going from healthy to covered in sores, losing weight, night sweats, all sorts of hideous things, and the fear, the loneliness, and the sense of loss of their youth, a sense of loss of their sexuality, and the sense of loss of a dream, the gay dream that we had in the 1970s, and which has been fulfilled in the 21st century, I am very glad to say.